Welcome back to Authentically Peculiar with Marcia. This trauma bond series has really opened the eyes of so many to what their experiences are and how they are connected with individuals based on their trauma link, based on their trauma connection. And what I'm hearing a lot is, why don't people leave? Well, we're going to talk about that today. Why people stay stuck in their traumatically bonded relationships. The truth is people don't know that they're in a traumatically bonded relationship. So when you don't know that you're in something, you possibly don't know that you need to get out of it. And getting out of it is like coming out of a domestic violence situation. There needs to be a plan, but there also needs to be healing and there needs to be self acceptance and self love. Leaving immediately may not be the answer right then, because when you first recognize that you are in a trauma bond, you have to give yourself permission to start addressing all of the things that you've accepted, giving yourself permission to really identify what began the process for you to be in this bonded situation and your true desire to heal. I know for a long time, or especially real frequently since COVID, most people would point fingers as the narcissist and talk about the narcissist, but they didn't talk about the trauma bonds that drew them into possibly being with a narcissist or being a narcissist themselves. Leaving, sometimes it's just not that simple. When you think about someone that is connected to a person via trauma bonds, you think about where the gaps were in their life, where they missed certain things in their life, their desires that they had, and how that actually shows up more as survival than anything else. They don't always recognize that they are connected uh, in a traumatic situation. So let's do the scientific part first. Trauma bonds are connected to your nervous system. The trauma actually is the one that's connected to your nervous system. When it becomes bonded, it takes away from the truth of who your identity is. When the brain is conditioned to survive and live in trauma, it's difficult to see that it's abnormal. I define abnormal as abnormal abuse or abuse that is not normal, abnormal. And being abused and having this traumatic space in your life, your brain is saying, this is our playground. This is what we're used to. This is what we're familiar with. Why should we change now? When you allow your brain to become conditioned and associated with danger in love, traumatic relationships, specifically parental relationships, it becomes difficult to differentiate what a red flag is in those relationships. Oftentimes we hear people say, well, that's your mama, or that's your dad, or that's your child, as if they can't provoke some level of trauma in your life, as if they may not be associated with the root cause of trauma. Your children aren't associated with the root cause because you actually transfer that, but whatever the root cause is in your parents have been transferred to you. You owned it as normal. You've owned it as it being a part of your existence, as what people have accepted as normal. So when you are introduced to situations that are different from what you're used to, it makes it very difficult for you to see something's not right. Oh, that's a red flag. You've been excusing it as a yellow flag, as a situation where, okay, that's just them. How many of you all have actually said, well, that's just the way they are? So, everybody's used to that. But you find yourself drawn back into the negative, aggressive behaviors. You find yourself accepting behaviors that you normally would not accept. You find yourself in a space where you are afraid to go outside of the norm because your brain has been conditioned to accept trauma and its links to survival. You've decided that leaving is scarier than staying in a trauma connected relationship. Oftentimes, I talk to individuals, especially lately with mother daughter relationships, where the daughter really is trying to figure out a way to connect with the mom. And the mom's idea is, I'm your mama, just follow my lead, do what I say. It doesn't matter if I say things that hurt you. It doesn't matter if I do things that hurt you. Just, I'm your mama. But they look around and they see healthy daughter and mother relationships and they desire it. So they stay in the fight a lot longer because they know that it is possible to have a healthy relationship with a mother. Part of the issue becomes when your voice is stolen and your voice is made to feel as if you are the enemy in the situation. When your voice is told to be quiet, when you're silenced, and when you're told that you're too sensitive, you take everything too seriously, and it's not that serious. When you're told that you're overreacting in a situation where your voice does not feel valid or validated, you have a trauma bond connection to the situation. When you begin to start to analyze what is this trauma connection, what you'll find is that you're holding on to a space because your heart is desiring that your head, something that your head is saying, that's not good for us. That doesn't work for us. But your heart can sometimes be infiltrated with fear. It can be infiltrated with rejection and abandonment. And if you have those pains from past experience, you don't want to relive those pains, so you stay in there. Oftentimes, I see people staying married for prolonged period of times or staying in relationships for prolonged period of times because they're so trauma connected that they believe that it was normal, and the fear of leaving is more overwhelming than going through what they've been going through and what they're used to. In order for you to move forward in your life, we have to start talking about what healing needs to look like for you. Healing for you is from a space of being connected to your true identity. I've shared with clients all week that we developed our identity based on our parents and our childhood. We based our identity from 5 years old to 18-year-old in social settings, school, church, things of that nature. To begin this journey of healing from toxic relationships, the first thing that you have to tell yourself is, I deserve better than being in a trauma bonded relationship, feeling disrespected, feeling unloved, feeling unsupported. Being able to honor yourself in those spaces requires you to be aware of what the relationship is like, but more importantly, aware of who you are as you build your identity. As I shared before, our identities are told to us from 0 to 5 by our parents in our familial situations. Starting at 5 to 18, we enter into an educated arena where our friends and teachers and administrators, as well as our parents, continue to define our identity. We get glimpses of who we are, but we don't necessarily lean completely into our identity because we're being told we should act this way, we should look this way, we should do this way, and those kind of things. 18 to 25, maybe even 30 in some cases, we're struggling to find our identity, but we are still highly influenced by the people that we're in college with, in the military with, uh, joining the workforce, as well as trying to build friend groups. And we still haven't fully grasped our full identity, a lot of times because we haven't grasped our purpose. Well, entering into the situation sometimes from birth are those traumatic bonds that have caused toxicity. And that's the identity that we have to break. So becoming self-aware of who you are in the redefining of you is going to be very important in order for you to be at a place so that you can determine this trauma bond is no longer part of who I am. It's your power to take back through self awareness, not to give away. Then you want to educate yourself on who am I really? What does that look like? What does education on yourself look like? First, you have to ask yourself about your own strengths, your areas of improvement, your values, your mindset, what your innate gifts are, what your natural abilities are. Then you begin to create a new language for who you are, not accepting of what everyone else says that you are. People ask me, how did I come up with the term authentically peculiar? Many, many years ago, in my 20s, I was asked to speak at a women's board anniversary at a church. 20, single mother, had heard the things, people calling me Jezebel and so many different things. And I had to decide at that point who I was in the moment of being asking. So at the time, I literally wrestled, spiritually wrestled with me and the universe, with me and God, to try to work on my identity. Nobody had ever taught me about the importance of my own identity. So when I ran across the scripture, 1 Peter 2:9, 10 through 11, talking about the peculiar people and that royal priesthood, that's been called out of darkness into the marvelous light, I owned the peculiar people part. And the authentic part was me learning to be true to myself, learning to have a voice when I felt like I was not being heard or validated or even supported. So I combined the two and became authentically peculiar. And that is who I am in everything that I do. When you learn your identity, your verbiage changes. I began to set boundaries, small boundaries, and there are some boundaries that I'm still working on to expand as I'm working on the book No, No, and Hell No. I recognize if we were able, if sorry, I recognize the importance of still working through the no, the no, and the hell no, because setting boundaries to me is constantly evolving, constantly moving in a space where you would get what you need based on the boundaries that you set with yourself first and with people. Setting boundaries is really the point of exercising that no muscle without explanation, without expectation of others, just not wanting to question. Your no is your no, and your boundary is your boundary, but you are the first one that will have to honor that. Another part of your healing journey is going to be the safe connection. That connection where you begin to work with a therapist. You may set up some type of mentorship or even change friend groups because your boundaries are reset. You want to establish safe connections where you can be vulnerable, where you can be open, where you are self-accepting, where you are accepting of others, and it's a reciprocated relationship. When you don't establish those boundaries in your life, you find yourself in a space where you are um, left empty a lot, where you are um, unfortunately in a space where you are alone and you have no connections. And in that, here comes the fear of being alone. I heard someone say the other day, I have a fear that I'll never have a great life. I have a fear that I have to accept these magnetic, toxic relationships. And I said, okay. And it's like, what do you mean, okay? Well, if that's your fear, and if you keep laying on that, whatever we're speaking, that's what we're going to attract. It takes you to decide that I'm going to intentionally attract something different. I hear people oftentimes say, I don't believe it. Believe in a name it, claim it, gospel, name it, claim it, situations, and all that kind of stuff. But your words are your biggest power source. You can leave a toxic relationship. You just have to heal and build up what it is that you actually desire versus focusing on the thing that you're trying to escape. You know you're going to escape. You want to escape. The truth is you just need to change the direction on how you're planning to escape and what you begin to tell yourself. Tell it to yourself until the seed has been sown so deep in you that no one can change that for you. Healing will require you to grieve the fantasy of what you desire to have with that toxic person. You're going to mourn those times when they were good times. You're going to despise those times when they weren't so good. You're going to feel perplexed, confused, frustrated because, and I hear women say this about relationships. I trained him how to be a good man and da 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 da. Now somebody else is going to get all of that training. Baby, you're fantasizing about what you brought to the table because you gave the best of you to somebody that couldn't give you the best of them. It's okay. Let them go. That just means that you've learned the lessons that you take into other relationships, the boundaries that you will establish, how you will honor yourself, how you will be present for yourself, and how you will trust who you are in upcoming relationships. It's okay to have a moment to grieve what you had hoped would be your everlasting relationship or your best relationship. It's okay to grieve those things, but it's also okay to free yourselves from those spaces of toxicity that have held you back. One of the things, and you know that I'm going to always make the suggestion on therapy. Why is therapy so important in your healing process? The right therapist will help you get down to the root cause of why you're associated with toxic relationships. It will take you to a space where you are able to get to your truth without judgment, without feeling arrested and being truthful, with helping you reduce being the enemy with inside of yourself, helping you to cope with the negative thoughts and words that you've been speaking for quite some time. Going to therapy is going to allow you to go inside and get the voice of that little person that may have been damaged that led to the toxic relationships. You don't have to choose therapy. I strongly encourage it. Why therapy over life coach? A lot of times in therapy, you're going to bump into some severely traumatic situations that life coaches aren't trained to handle. And that's nothing against a life coach because I'm a certified life coach as well. But the reality is, some of the trauma is beyond the life coach training, and you want to be in a space where you are able to rebirth yourself. Oftentimes, or not oftentimes, but there are books out there right now that are talking about reparenting your younger child, where you're going to be rebirthing yourself from the state of where your root cause began to help you to heal your toxic connections. If you find yourself in toxic connected relationship, you have to ask yourself, what are the benefits? What do you need? Sometimes, as I shared in other episodes, is that you want to be the hero, you want to be seen as the hero, and that is your identity. But being in that heroism identity, you get lost. You get lost in the makeup, you get lost in the mask, in the costume, in the covering of being a hero. And you find yourself easily broken, but then sucked back in. You have to remind yourself, you have to remind yourself in the importance of your own value and your own worth so that you can be your absolute best self. So here are some key takeaways on really becoming self-aware and healing to a point of if you need to leave that toxic relationship. One, know yourself. Become familiar with who you are, your voice, your needs, your desires. Two, love yourself through all things. Accept who you are. Loving yourself without conditions. Speaking with voices of gratitude within your space. And seeing you as a whole person. Three, visualize a life without a trauma bond or a toxic relationship. See it, own it, appreciate it, and love it. Four, give yourself permission to heal and go forward. That's real simple. I don't even have to explain that. Just give yourself that permission. And lastly, five, be in a space of joy for your newness, your new identity, your new relationships, your new existence. You deserve better. So get better. Until the next episode on Authentically Peculiar with Marcia, I want you to remember to stay focused, stay peculiar, and always be authentic. Take good care.